The Unholy Trinity Podcast. 3 Blues, 3 Opinions, 1 Everton Podcast.
Welcome to episode 150 of the Unholy Trinity Podcast, brought to you in association with Sports Social, the UK's only dedicated sports podcast network, and also Fanatics. We're back again. Everton defeated by Tottenham Hotspur, unfortunately, this weekend. Second defeat in a row for the Blues after a really good unbeaten run of 7 games, which we're going to discuss shortly. Once again, me and Lee are joined by 2 guests. Pete's in the Shepherd's Hut in Wales, so he can't make it. So he's off grid almost. So Pete will be back next weekend. But 2 guests once again. We've got the usual. I always call him the 4th member of the Unholy Trinity. Phill Hayward is here to give us his thoughts on yesterday's game and looking forward to Newcastle. How are you, Phill?
I'm fine, thanks, mate. Thanks again for asking me to come on, mate.
No, look forward to the chat, mate, even though it was a defeat for the Blues, of course. And also, man has been on the show for a little while now, Callum Wyatt. Callum, tell everyone what you've been up to and your new business venture before we kick off.
Yeah, just been busy. So I've decided to set up on my own. I've been coaching for a long time now, so I've decided to look at doing some sort of one-to-one coaching, and small team coaching as well. So yeah, so I'm based obviously in Merseyside, Liverpool, going around obviously coaching players of all ages really, so young ones up to adults, and working with some players who are at academies and players who are sort of looking to get into the academy system as well. And
you're on Instagram, aren't you, Callum? What we will tag you into when the podcast goes out on the story, and whatever, we will put you on there. So at elite_pro_FC, is that correct?
Yeah, that's the one, yeah, on Instagram.
Yeah. So I've just read it, so I should hope it's right. So anyone that wants some one-to-one coaching, Callum's done it for, as he said, for many, many years. Got a great knowledge of the game. So by all means, have a look on Instagram at his page there, and we'll throw the link out ourselves for people to look at. But back to the Blues. Like I said, defeated the Spurs yesterday, 2-0. And I don't know about you, Lee, but it didn't really tell the whole story, did it? Because we've got to look back on that game. Well, I do anyway. I was, as much as they are a good side, they are ahead of ourselves. We know that there's levels to the game. When you miss 2 golden opportunities that we missed in the first half, you've got to look back and feel a little bit bitter about coming away with a 2-0 defeat, haven't you?
Yeah, the way the game panned out, especially first half. Yeah, I mean, I'll quote what I said in the last podcast, which is we were discussing between the 4 of us at the time how will we set up and play. And I said, I think I'd put my mortgage on it that Frank wouldn't set us up as open as he did when we played them back in March last year, when he was finding out a bit more about us as a team. And that's what it proved to be. It's exactly what it was pretty much from the first whistle, wasn't it? We made it clear what our tactics were, was to sit off, close the spaces, be hard to break down, and try and carry a threat on the counter. And I think all of us will agree, first half, we did a good job of that. We nullified them. The only thing they really created was Kane with a bit of skill on the touchline, and Pickford smothered that. And then, we had 2, like you just said, 2 of the best chances of the half by a distance. The first one brilliantly created by himself, by Damari Gray, did the hard bit as Gray tends to do, and then fluffed his lines when it came to making that final decision, which, we can point the finger at him a lot, Damari, for that. And as I've said before, he does the hard things well, Damari, and sometimes makes the easy things look difficult. And then obviously, we'll touch on it in a bit anyway, but Onana there striding away, and you're just waiting for the net to bulge, and just didn't quite have that composure at the end. I know it was on his weak foot and all that, but you just got to get your head over the ball. And Phil, you're the resident coach nowadays, mate, and the manager, mate. I mean, get your head over the ball and make sure in Roy Keane's words, you hit the target. Do you know what I mean? So that was an awful impression, by the way.
I was going to say, what was that?
No, but you know what I mean. But the point still stands. Second half, as expected, Spurs were just as Frank said after the game, they're a Champions League side. And, we're trying to get to that level. But as we all know, and if we're being brutally honest, we've got a long way to go on that journey. But, let's not lose sight of that. The perspective is needed here. And we were always second favourites going into that game. And we acquitted ourselves, as I said, really well first half. And then we just got undone in the second half, didn't we?
I think the first half, that was especially for me. I quite enjoyed watching the first half in terms of how we set up. Bar that first 10 minutes where it was a little bit frantic, wasn't it? There was a lot of pressure from Tottenham. You could see how the game was going to go and what we were trying to do. But then we settled, didn't we? And there was a few decent passages of play. And those two chances, obviously, they were by far the best chances of the game, really. And we didn't make the most of them. And you always think at the time, if we don't take one of those two, it's going to come back to haunt us. But if we look at the first half in isolation, Phil, the first half was okay, wasn't it? Considering, like Lee said then, we made the point last week about the 5-0 from last season and how, we'd hoped to have learned lessons and set up differently, which we clearly did. But we certainly went into the game with a decent game plan, and it looked it did work in that first half, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a very mature performance. I think we were quite stubborn. I don't think Lampard had to say much. Obviously, his team talk, you could just put the results up in the changing rooms before the game. But in periods of games, you do get moments. And like Lee was saying there, the two big moments fell for us. And I was just slightly disappointed that we just didn't work Lloris on those two chances. You got to hit the target at least and ask the question, basically. But I wasn't expecting us to get clear-cut chances like that. If I'm being totally honest, I thought we'd sip, and I thought they would come maybe with 20 to go if we were still in the game. But in the first half, for Everton to break like that and get two decent chances, it changes the team talk, doesn't it, as well? You're going 1-0 up at half time. It changed the complete team talk. But I was surprised how mature we were with the ball as a unit, as a block. And they were quite brave, if I'm being honest. They were quite brave, because like I said online last week, I was more disappointed last week not getting anything against United than I thought we would do anything against Spurs. And if you think about the two Spurs chances, we didn't do any of that in the United game after we scored with Iwobi. So I was surprised how well we started. It's just a shame that we couldn't continue that into the second half.
Yeah, most definitely. And you think why was that? What changed? Obviously the quality of the Spurs side and the players they had available on the bench. Like we said, it's night and day between where we want to get to and where they are. But Callum, you must, like I just said, you must be fairly satisfied with that first half in terms of how we did play, the chances that we created, the fact that we looked difficult to break down, as we've seen a lot of games this season, bar that Harry Kane chance. Everton looked like they did learn lessons from last season. Obviously, different personnel. I think it was only 2 players who started the game last season actually started the game against Spurs this weekend. So there is a plan there, isn't there? And like Lee said, perspective is really, really key when you play these kind of sides. So you've got to think, well, okay, we've lost the game, but there were positives that we can take from it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I watched the game, and I think that first half, the main thing for Everton was obviously that back five, and having the 3 in front with then Ray and Mapai working as a 2. If you watch that first half back, Everton just want to dominate centrally in that middle of that pitch, where Holberg normally gets on the ball free and he drives and he plays little pockets of pass into Kane with Bentancur. And that first half, we didn't allow that. If you watch the first half, a lot of their passes went out wide every time. But because we had the back five, it allowed our right back and obviously McNeil to sort of lock on and force play inside into the bodies that we had. And having 5 in there, sort of with Mapai and Gray dropping in, we were solid. I think for me, the changing point in the game was when Richarlison went off. I think they'd done a change of system. Richarlison went off. I can't remember who came on now.
Basuma, wasn't it?
Who was it?
Basuma,
yeah. And they just changed the dynamic of the game. I think they moved Perisic as well, didn't they? So, but I think up until that point, I think we were solid, and that's sort of I think they would have worked on all week would have been to just command that central area, and if balls do go in there, to smother it. So if Kane drops in, get hyper, and obviously watching the running behind. So obviously we know the threat that Son causes, and I think that's why again he played that back five, because a back four, I think Son and stuff and Kane they love that, and you know we relish them games where they get loads of space.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Basuma substitution, which obviously was forced with Richarlison going off injured, he left the ground on crutches by all accounts last night. That did change the game because Basuma then sitting allowed other midfield players for them to advance a little bit. I mean, you saw Hayward get the second goal, didn't we, fairly late on? But that Basuma change did make a massive difference to the Spurs system. We've got to pick up on the goals, really. I mean, we look at the first one, Lee, and you know, Jordan Pickford's going to be massively disappointed with obviously not holding that first opportunity. Pickford, we know, has been very consistent for the last 18 months or so, and normally he would gather that kind of shot up, and then obviously Kane's there. But the first question I've got to ask you, Lee, I mean, I know my opinion on it. Do you think it was a penalty, or has Harry Kane done what Harry Kane always does? I don't want to sort of preload the question here, but has he done what he always does and gone looking for it?
I mean, look, he made a great save first and foremost, and he picked up 2 minutes before that from Kane, which is, you know, it's not an easy save that, because he's drilled into the ground, loads of pace on it. You know, so many times we see those fly into the net, so credit there. But Jordan will be massively disappointed he's let that come out of his grasp, because as good a strike as it was from Doherty on his weak foot, he didn't absolutely catch it, did he? I mean, it was relatively weak, really. I know it came through a couple of bodies, but he's got to hold on to that. You know, for a level of goalkeeper that he is, first and foremost, he's got to hold on to it. He didn't. And then for me, it's just very, very clever centre forward play after that, because it was just, he knew Harry. I mean, I think I saw an interview with Frank actually saying that, not to be derogatory to Harry, but he's he's a wise old head. He knows what he's doing, and that's exactly what I thought. No matter what, whether people think there's contact, there certainly was a brush of the head. Obviously, I think Pickford ran straight over to the ref and said he hit my head. If you actually try and read what he's saying, but you know, it's just clever play. Now, I want to push the question on to you guys actually to see what you think, because when Damari went through first half, I'm thinking he's got himself goal side ahead of Bentancur there, and he's obviously used his pace to get free, and then obviously the ball slightly bobbled for him to give him a little bit of a break from it. But if that's a super clever centre forward there, with Bentancur, fuming that he's obviously got the wrong side of him, you go down. As soon as you feel Bentancur was on him, by the way, he did shove him as well. There was contact. It was very similar to Mason Mount in the week when it was never really a red against Milan, but Mason Mount stayed on his feet, got the shot off, and then they pulled it back and gave the penalty. Now there was obviously a bit more. It was a bit more contact from Tomori, to be fair, but I did feel for Tomori at the same time, because he stayed on his feet and had the shot. You know what I mean? So, but Gray there for me, if that's Kane, for example, in that situation, I think he probably thinks in his head, I'm getting goal side, I'm getting in the box, and I'm going to fall over. Yeah. And the referee, even with VAR now, they only have to see minimal contact. They slow-mo it down. It's a goal-scoring opportunity. He's not playing the ball. He gets the red card, gets the penalty, and the likelihood is we're playing against 10 men and we got a penalty. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say. Harry Kane in that situation is very, very clever. Very, very clever. He won the pen. Even if they'd reviewed it on VAR, they still would have given it. Because obviously to overturn a ref's decision now, as we know, it's got to be clear and obvious. It's got to be like he's completely dived. He's gone over easy. We know that. He's gone over very easy. But it's also very clever play. And at that point, sadly, I bet you every single Evertonian, whether we were there or watching it on TV, just thought that's game over pretty much there now. Yeah, I mean, in terms of obviously now us having to score 2 goals away from home at a tough ground.
So the concern is for me with it is that he makes the movement to actually fall and go down, before there's any kind of contact. That's what drives me. Look, now we can all dress up and say it's clever, it's this, it's that. I mean, the line that was used in one of the media outlets was he's earned a penalty. Well, what does that mean? You either have a penalty because you're being fouled, it's not. You don't earn a penalty, you know. So Kane does it, and we can call it clever. We can all dress it up and say, you know, if our players did it, we'd be made up. We probably would. Listen, it's frustrating the fact that certain players will behave a particular way, and he'll get away with murder, and he gets away with it all the time. Kane, we know he's a quality striker. We know he's very, you know, and what he does, it's cute and whatever, you know. But it's so frustrating when we have played particularly well, I think, against one of the better sides in the league, and you know, we probably, when we sit back, maybe in a few days' time, maybe me personally, the most frustrating thing would be the fact that Jordan Pickford didn't hold on to the ball. We're not sitting here discussing the penalty, are we? But I just think, though, Phill, it's one of them, isn't it, where maybe if it's for you, then you think, yeah, like Lee said, you know, it's clever, it's cute, whatever it might be. When it's against you, and you see that he has gone down, he's already initiated that fall before there's any kind of contact. He's put the picture of his arms in the air, you know, like he's being shot by a sniper in the crowd. But it's that, isn't it? That's a frustrating thing when it goes against you and you see that. It really winds you up, doesn't it?
You literally took the words out of my mouth, Mike. To be fair, I was just going to say, if I'm playing there and he's my centre forward, you're asking for it all day long. But if it's against you, it's never a penalty. I think it's one of those things. The only person who knows is Harry Kane, to be honest. And I think he's a goal scorer. He wants goals. He smells blood. And he knew as soon as Pickford, and the thing is, he reacted as soon as Pickford dropped that. That's how good he is off the ball. He smelled danger, an opportunity to get something, and he's got it. And like I said, if it's happening for your team, you're screaming for it. If it's against you, you're saying never VAR. Again, just what Lee said there. You know, I honestly do think it's the badge you're wearing, because again, the Richarlison one at home, 0-0 Lloris, you don't get it. And then if Gray goes through there, goes down, I still don't think he gets that. I just think it's referees, the human beings at the end of the day, they know they've marked the cards on certain players. And I just think it's the badge, in all fairness, to who it is. And things like, again, today, we're talking about the City game, you know, the disallowed goal. Richarlison had his share pulled back last year at home, if you remember. Something similar to the game today. So I think on the penalty, if it's for you and it's your striker, you're screaming for it. But if it's against you, it's never a penalty. It's one of those.
What do you think, Callum? Do you think, like, I mentioned Damari Gray one there. If that's me, I'm thinking, if I feel contact, having got goal side of the guy, yeah, I'm getting in the. I'm going to go down. Yeah. I'm going to go down. What do you think, Emma? Do you think that's obviously there's a bit of dishonesty in that as well, I suppose? But no, that's the way football is now, isn't it? It's the way football is.
I think when that ball went through and you see him get inside a bench kid and get the wrong side of him, sort of thing, you're looking and you're thinking, oh, you can go down here because you're the right side of him now. You can pull you down. And in hindsight, I think like the angle that he's on, I think that's his best bet. I think for that, it's like obviously it's a good chance, but he is quite wide of an angle. I think for me, if I'm a striker there, I'm going down.
Yeah.
If I'm 1-on-1, running down the middle, the keeper's coming out, then yeah, I'll try and get a shot off. If I get a pen, I get a pen. But on that angle there, I think he's got to go down. And on that first like sort of tug that he feels, he's got to go. And at least then it's, you know, either a penalty makes the ref says yes or no, or it goes to VAR, and then we potentially get it. And obviously then down the other end, it's sort of Pickford making an absolute worldie of a save from Kane, like minutes earlier, and then spilling. You know, he probably saved them in training 9 times out of 10, every single time. And that one, he's like being a shot come in, he spilled it. Kane's obviously instinctively, as you teach strikers to do, any shot that goes in, make sure you follow in. He's done it and he's got the pen. But yeah, for me, I think Gray's got to go down there. He's got to. If that's Mo Salah, he goes down.
Did you see the one yesterday? Brentford Fulham, the lad went down.
No.
And it got checked. The fullback Fredericks, he's beat the man. The lad's pulled his arm and he's just took his legs away. Nothing. And then the Mitrovic one was a bit of half a dozen kind of thing, and he's been just the inconsistency, which is the most.
Yeah, I saw that, Phil. I saw that.
So because he got pulled back.
VAR, did it?
Yeah. I think both. The Brentford one, the Bournemouth one did. I don't think the Mitrovic one did. I think he gave it straight away, but it's just the inconsistency. Like he got pulled back, Mitrovic, but fell forward. It was like a strange. He played it basically, but just the inconsistency, like you said.
But also on that, sorry, also on that Mitrovic one. Not that we should be discussing that in detail, but the ball was miles gone as well, wasn't it? It was nowhere near the play either. So, it was grappling at best, wasn't it? Grappling goes on set pieces. You know what I mean? And that was very soft. But look, one thing we do know, the refereeing level now, and we've said this for a long time, is the worst I think it's ever been, hasn't it? In terms of supposedly the best league in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the worst. It really is the worst. We see it every single week now. Shocking decision. Look, I don't think that was a glaring error with the Kane one. We've seen penalties where Salah's thrown himself like platoon to the ground, hasn't he? You know what I mean? And won penalties. It was nowhere near as bad as that. And like you said it yourself, Mike. If that's Calvert-Lewin doing that, and then basically being clever, if you like, and winning the pen, you're not gonna complain, are you? So it is one of those where it's against you, you're fuming. Where it's for you, you're kind of like, well done.
I think the official line from VAR was basically it wasn't a clear and obvious error. So we know nowadays, most things, most decisions, especially when we looked at by VAR, whether it's officially or unofficially, but that was what was told to the commentators on the day. But as I say, it's a frustrating series of events really, which led to that first goal. And we didn't really show at all in the second half, did we? We didn't have a shot in the second half. I think the first time in 6.5 years we haven't had a shot.
What's frustrated me in that second half, and it just frustrates me. It's sort of like we stay compact, we then goes out wide, we win it, and then as soon as we win it, we can't give a simple 5-yard pass, and then we lose it again, and then the attack, and it's like you just regain the ball. You've looked up, just give a simple pass. Like so many, just sloppy, either a sloppy pass or a player not concentrating when they're receiving the ball. Like Onana will come to him and he'll take a bad touch, similar to the United game or whatever. It's so frustrating. I think that's something we need to get better at, is taking the sting out of games and sort of winning it back and just controlling it. I just don't think from the Spurs game, you've got enough midfielders that are fluid enough to go and get on it. I think Hayward is, but he doesn't really drop into that pivot now to go and get it deep. He sort of stays high and allows Gan to go in, or maybe Onana, but there's no quick rotation in. And if you look at like Cody and Tarkowski trying to like feed the ball into central areas, they're having to like play it out wide to Coleman, who's got a man on him, and he'll scupper it and he'll turn back and he'll play it back. Or Tarkowski will try and ping a 35-yard pass diagonal, or ping one down to Mapai, who's never going to win the ball. And I think that's our problem at the moment with the teams we're playing, is that they're squeezing up really, really high because they know they can box us in. So if Gray's coming to get it to feet, they're going to squeeze up even more because Mapai's not fast and behind anyway. You know what I mean? Whereas we've got Calvert-Lewin playing a bit like, he's quite quick and we'll stay back a little bit. And it gives that freedom to try and play through the lines. And it also gives us an out ball to try and get out. If obviously we can't hit midfielders, we can go long to Calvert-Lewin, but we can't do that at the moment with the striker we've got up front.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I noticed that. I think Frank's alluded to it himself, didn't he? As soon as we come across a half decent side, like we played United and then we played Tottenham, and Newcastle won't be an easy game either. Teams that are, basically like you just said there, Callum, pressing us. Our first go-to is, rather than trying to take it on the half turn and be brave and play it through the lines, our first thought is I don't want to give it away. I'll just knock it back to the centre half, or I'll knock it square, or I'll knock it to the full back and get it back. And there was so many times where we were just either through confidence on the ball, either through Tottenham having that extra man in midfield, like you said, when they brought Basuma on, so that squeezes even more. We do lack that player in the middle who's capable of just getting it on that half turn and basically causing problems. If you look at our best performance at that ground, was when Calvert-Lewin scored that header, obviously under Ancelotti, first game of the season. But if you remember that game, that wasn't really a massive smash and grab either. We were brilliant that day in midfield, and obviously, yeah, he was. But then obviously Hammers was thrown in there. And Hammers is the type of guy again who would just get on it, create space, not look to go square all the time, and switching play constantly to Lucas Dean and people like that. I said to you, Mike, the other day, when Patterson got injured, and we all knew it would be a loss, but we can see now massively how much of an outlet he was, particularly down that right side. Because Mykolenko, as we know, solid defensively, offers next to nothing going the other way, and then Coleman, sadly now in his older age now, again, doesn't really offer anything going the other way. So fullbacks now, who's supposed to give us a width, they're not really giving us anything. And Patterson, to be fair, he was very aggressive offensively, isn't he? He wants to get on it. He wants to push up against the other, his opposition number, and he wants to create things. When he hasn't scored a goal yet, but you can see he's got into the box a few times. He's got a few shots off. Coleman's not going to do that for you now. So, our attacking outlets are getting smaller and smaller. And I just wanted to get your opinions as well, boys, on Maupay. Really, I thought he really struggled. And obviously, look, it's a tough ask. He's the same against United, asking a guy of that stature to go up against two centre halves and try and do something. But there was times as well where he had easy layoffs and easy time where he wasn't under as much pressure, and he gave it away too easily, and he didn't trap it. And for me, in that position, if I'm in his situation, look, if you can't lay it off, or if you're losing it to the bigger man, get your body in the way. Look, Pino was an expert at it. Get your body in the way, win a foul, break up the play. He didn't win anything in fouls. And I watched him closely at home against United the other day. The amount of times where Coleman got on the ball, first thought, now I'm going to look down the line. Maupay, you should be sprinting down that channel, mate. Even if you don't get it, make a run into the channel so we can just flip it into the channel so you can run after it, hold it up, win a foul, or hold it up and go back and just keep it. And he the same against Spurs. We were having to go direct to him more than we would have liked in the second half, and he didn't hold on to anything. No. He didn't hold on to anything, and that there gives us nothing then in terms of progressing the ball forward.
On that, Lee, I thought the United game was set for him under lights at home. I was quite disappointed with the front three going forward that game, and against pretty similar to the Spurs game. I thought, like you said, he'd be a bit more snide, a bit more clever with his body, and he'd be the one that would buy the fouls, get the cheap fouls, and get us further off the pitch. I was quite disappointed, and again, he's 5'0", but people getting closer towards him, but protecting the ball. When you've been doing doggies or you've lost the ball for 10 minutes, it's protecting it, and it just seems to bounce off him, or he just doesn't seem to be switched on to push us further forward. But again, as we were saying in the preview, we'll look into that, and no doubt going forward, what we should do going further forward. I just feel we seem too spacious, especially on bigger pitches as well. We get Spurs away.
I think with Maupay, obviously it's difficult. He came in, didn't he, against Liverpool, and we've commented on him over the last few weeks how well he did when he first came in. That first game, hadn't played a minute of football, and he was great, buzzing around. Should have really scored, but we've seen him, especially last couple of games, and he's really struggled with things. And we're not playing in a way that suits him, and it is very much sort of needs must still at this moment in time. But there are times when the ball is bouncing off him, and you do want him just to do the simple thing, hold the ball up and bring players in. But obviously we are going to discuss the attacking options and attacking concerns going forward in the second half of today's show. But just to pull it back to finish off about Spurs, obviously the second goal, the killer goal late on, as we know, it was going to happen, wasn't it? Everton tried a little bit to push and try and get something from the game, and they came down our left hand side through a cross, and it was messy, wasn't it? It falls to Højbjerg and it goes in, and there was an inevitability about the second goal, wasn't it, Callum, in a way, once you got that first goal, and you thought, well, we're going to have to open up a little bit to try and get something from the game. Made a few changes, James Garner, Dominic Calvert-Lewin obviously coming on the pitch, but you saw it coming, didn't you?
Yeah, I think, when you go to Spurs, you sort of you want to stay in the game as long as you can and try and nick a goal. But I think once that goal went in and we're starting to try and commit more bodies forward, our defensive line, we haven't got the youngest defenders in the world. You know what I mean? We've got Coleman, Tarkowski, Cody, and, the last thing you want to be doing is playing in speed and the likes of Son, Kane, them players. But that breakaway goal, I thought was quite lucky, to be honest, because it didn't break the sort of Kane on the halfway, and it looks like he took a bad touch, but he's like still got it ahead of Michalenko, and then played the ball across, didn't he? And he went obviously down, cut it back to Holberg, and then obviously he scored. But that was always on the card. I just think we're quite toothless at the moment. I think Mapai, I think in the box, he's always hungry. He's always there looking to get a poacher's finish. He obviously in the derby, he should have scored that chance that he had. Scored a good goal against West Ham. But I think his all-round sort of holder play at the moment, I think he's struggling. I thought, like Phill said, I thought he was very, very poor in the United game. I don't think he gave us anything at all. I thought, and the thing for me as well is, he sort of started coming deep into pockets to try and get on the ball and saying, go and give it to me. And Martinez would just come with him and tussle him and throw him to the ground. But for me, it was like, if you're going to come into that pocket and Martinez is coming with you and you're dragging him out, why are we not playing it over the top into someone who's on a higher line? And I think sometimes that's where them dynamics come in of and them triggers come in, that if Mapai is going to come short, okay, can we get Gray running in behind and penetrating centrally? Sort of like he did against Forest when we scored that goal, we went long. You know, if you've got someone dropping in, so if Kane drops in for Spurs, Son runs in behind and goes long. But I think in that Man United game, I don't think we did it. And I thought he was ineffective again against Spurs. But I think he's got a tough task at the moment. I don't think we're giving him a lot of good chances within the box. But I don't think he's helping us either in terms of getting up the pitch as best that he can. But it might go back to, like Mike said, is he still unfit? You know, he's played that derby, he played at home. I think he's played something like 12 minutes of football or something since March, or one or two times. And obviously now he's playing every week. So is he fully fit? I don't know. For me, I don't know.
I think. I mean, we're going to discuss that in the second half of the show in a minute in a bit more detail. Now, going into the Newcastle game in a few days' time, we have more options, hopefully. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. Of course, knowing Everton, we'll probably lose 2 or 3 players in the next 2 days or so before the game. But we're going to discuss basically the attacking options that we've got, because let's bear in mind where we are in terms of goals scored so far this season, and the fact that you mentioned there, Callum, we're being a little bit toothless. We're not looking particularly fantastic in an attacking sense. You know, as much as we've scored a few half decent goals, we're not creating a great deal, are we? So we're going to take a short break and discuss that and potential changes we want to see as we go into the game at St James's Park on Wednesday night.
The Unholy Trinity Podcast. 3 Blues, 3 opinions, 1 Everton podcast.